Welcome, everyone, to a special edition of the Dean's Fireside Chat Series. It's great to be back with you for episode 15. My name is Joe Derry. I'm one of the Deans and Vice Presidents within the School of Technology here at WGU, Western Governors University. And I have the privilege of working with the Data Analytics, Computer Science, and Software Engineering departments. It's hard to believe it's already been 15 episodes of the Dean's Fireside Chat Series since we kicked off. And over that time, we've had some phenomenal people that have come from different industries, different subject matter experts, different thought leaders. We've heard all about the trending topics of the day. We've heard about best practices. We've heard about gotchas. We've heard personal origin stories. But the one thing we haven't heard from is our alumni. We have amazing thought leaders and professionals and folks that just have truly inspirational stories that exist within our student populations today. And I am so thrilled for our Alumni Bites episode to be able to bring Brianna and Obi and Chaz here today to talk about their origin stories and their experiences getting into analytics and software development. So before we kick off with some targeted questions about how they chose their career paths, their programs, advice that they have for all of our students who are watching, our alumni who are watching, our friends who are watching, the random LinkedIn and YouTube passerbys that are watching, I'd like to turn the mic over to each of them to just introduce themselves, give a little bit of their background, not too much because we want to save some for the questions, but just to let our listeners know who they are. So Obi, would you like to start with just a couple of words?
Hi, my name is Obi. I'm a WGU Distinguished Graduate for the year 2023. I graduated with a bachelor's in software development, and I've been working as a software development engineer for the last 4 or 5 years now. Prior to that, I started my career in IT, working IT support, and kind of like just went up from there. Super excited to be here, super excited to chat and have some fun about what's been going on in the tech industry. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Obi. Brianna, do you want to go next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Brianna Jones. I have my bachelor's in marine biology and just recently got my master's in data analytics this past May. And I'm just happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Brianna. Chaz?
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Chaz. I graduated this year with a bachelor's in data analytics. I've been in the industry for around 10 to 12 years, switched from culinary and worked my way up.
Awesome. Welcome, Chaz. And for those that are listening at home right now that have heard any of my prior fireside chats, you know that I love diverse backgrounds, right? You know that I love that analytics teams, tech teams, digital teams, software teams benefit from all of these, really this melting pot of experiences that folks bring to the table. And you heard a little touch of that in some of the intros already, right? So I'm going to kick off, Brianna, with you today. And you mentioned marine biology. I know you have a passion for ocean conservation as well. And now you're working in data analytics. And you, as you mentioned, you recently earned your master's in data analytics. Congratulations on that. How do you make that move from marine biology and ocean conservation to data analytics? Because I got to imagine that a lot of our listeners are not seeing that as a very clear path necessarily.
Yeah, so marine biology and data analytics intersect in more ways than people might think. So for example, data analytics can be used to create models to predict behavior of marine ecosystems, population dynamics, and environmental changes. So an example on that is like data on fish populations, water temperature, and like salinity. Those things can be analyzed to predict like migration patterns or assess the impacts of climate change. And so now in like the face of a technology-ran world, modern marine research relies heavily on like technology and data-driven approaches to better understand these complex ocean systems in a more cohesive way. So something that I focused heavily on in my previous position was geographic information systems, which is abbreviated as GIS. So within GIS, combined with data analytics, it allowed me to map and analyze spatial data, such as like species distribution, habitats, and environmental factors in the ocean. And in my previous position, I also utilized a lot of drone imagery to focus on seabird quantification, which helped to support the deforestation, which is the cutting down of coconut trees on Palmyra Atoll. I did time series mapping of kelp along California's northern coast. And my last project was doing coral reef restoration to enhance conservation efforts in Moorea, French Polynesia, which I ultimately helped to create the first interactive coral restoration map for that country.
Wow, that is awesome. And there are so many buzzword things in there that I want to back into. The drones, the geospatial analysis. There's so much that's data oriented in that.
Yeah.
So did you find that a lot of these things started to confront you kind of in the moment and you had to kind of self-teach some of these things as well? Like how did you start to engage with some of these technologies and this data?
Yeah, so some things did just confront me and I had to take that on head first. So within doing GIS, sometimes, so you will pull data from all these different sources. It can be your own data or you can like outsource data from a university. And with those things, you know, data is messy depending on who handles it. Everybody has their different way of handling data. And so trying to plug that into like a GIS software such as ArcGIS, you might need to clean it. You can either clean it prior or clean it in Arc. And so my colleague was very familiar with cleaning stuff in Arc and doing it that way. And so I kind of had to like learn how to do small steps, but I didn't really fully learn how to do it. It was just like based on the situation at hand or based on the project at hand. I kind of just learned how to navigate that one issue and then just move forward within that. So that also just made me want to hone like how to do it in general and even outside of the ArcGIS software.
Okay. You know, the one thing that I picked up on that too was data is messy everywhere. It is industry agnostic. And if you're currently in a data cleaning course or you have to take a data cleaning course or you're thinking, do I need to learn data cleaning? It is needed everywhere, my friends. The other thing I was thinking too is when you mentioned the geospatial, which is a really interesting application within the marine biology, that also spans a lot of industries too. I think back to one of my first jobs where I was asked to do a geospatial analysis to basically recommend where to put retail stores. So if you pick your favorite pharmacy or retail store, you know, a lot of the analysis that goes into that in a different application is, well, how close should they be to each other? You know, I'm from the Boston, Massachusetts area. If you look out my window right now, you know, that is the Boston area. It's a beautiful day. It seems like there's a Dunkin' Donuts in every corner, quite literally. You know, so I wonder what kind of geospatial analysis may have gone through that. But the point I'm making is that regardless of the domains, even marine biology and ocean conservation, they are all starting to pull from a lot of these themes. So Chaz, now is your chance to help us the same way Brianna took us from marine biology and ocean conservation to data, to understand how you went from culinary arts in the kitchen to data. Could you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, the industries they have their parallels, they have their differences. When I was coming up in the culinary world, you're dealing with a lot tighter deadlines. You're dealing with a lot more pressure. You have really close teams, but that all translates to a corporate world, to a call center, to operations, to tech. The through line with my journey has been just wanting to learn, wanting to continue to find out more about the subject matter, whether it's a better technique to do a recipe more efficiently to deliver to a customer, to making a user macro within a call center to help one of the reps fill out forms that they have to repeatedly fill out every time, to getting into data and then getting into machine learning and generative tasks, and even learning about parts of the industry that I never thought I'd learn about with infrastructure and production services and the back ends of all of these enterprise systems. So every step of the way has that through line of learning, deadlines, teamwork, and pressure. So that's kind of the journey that I took.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the parallels there too. And thinking back to my experience in restaurants, there's so much in interacting with different parts of the business with end users to juggling multiple things that are there. Not to mention, I'm pretty sure you probably left the industry with some incremental cooking skills, some awesome recipes. Perhaps maybe we could share our risotto recipes or something a little bit later.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate, you know, so far between Brianna and Chaz, and we'll get to Obi in just a second, around how you're able to go from these backgrounds that didn't necessarily seem at face value related to data and be able to make this really clear and clean transition to it. Okay, so at this point, we've now heard about marine biology, we've heard about culinary in the kitchen, and we're now going to move over to Obi. So, Obi, you are somebody who I am really excited to talk to because of your role, especially with women in tech here at WGU, which is such an important organization, such an important club, really advocating for the unfortunate reality that we still need more women in technical domains. It's just the reality of where we are today, and it's something that we are trying very hard to close that gap in. And you were a leader in that organization. So how do you go from leading this student organization that is really so mission driven and then finding your path into software development, now working for a major tech company as well, which we're so proud of. So talk to me a little bit about your origin story, where women in tech came in, and then how that led into this role in software development.
Yeah, I think that's a very lovely question, and I do appreciate the comment about the support for the Women in Tech Club here at WGU. My background is, has been sort of linear in a way. So I started off working IT support, mainly supporting customers, and kind of like just grew from there until I, maxed out at a certain level. Uh, because I didn't have a bachelor's degree going in, and that was when I decided that maybe it's time to get a more advanced an advanced degree, which that would be a bachelor's degree for me at that point. And the main thing that prompted that was just, I've always loved problem solving. Problem solving is very, I love that. I love being able to, fix things. I'm a fixer, right? So bring the problem to me, I'll try to fix it. So, over time, I developed this passion for solving problems, and kind of like that led me to explore software development because the idea of building software is you're trying to solve a problem with technology, right? There is a problem out there. People are, for instance, in the case of Uber or taxi, right? People are trying to go from one destination to another, but they need transport, right? So the problem you're trying to solve is affordable transport, for people. So that kind of like led me, that problem solving passion led me to pursue software development as a career, and that was how I found the BGU and got into the BGU. And also, I think one thing that was also important to me for choosing software was the desire to innovate, so the desire to build something new. I've always loved the idea of like building something from scratch, like a system, a tool, an application, whatever it may be. Just to me, it's kind of like a process of nurturing something. Like you have this fantastic idea that comes to you, like when you're meditating or whatever. It's like, oh wow, that's a problem that I could solve with technology, and how am I going to do that? Maybe you have to build a tool from scratch, or maybe you have to build a system from scratch. So that desire for innovation was also very important when deciding, like, if I was going to transition into software from IT support. And finally, I think being able to have direct impact on users at a certain scale, right? So when I was doing IT support, yeah, I was able to support users by troubleshooting, helping them fix whatever it is they were trying to fix, right? But it got to a point whereby I was like, I'm only treating the symptom, right? The actual problem is the software you're using. It's, maybe it's a crappy software, maybe it's something that needs to be updated. And that was when I started to think more about transitioning into software. Like, so being able to have more direct impact on users at a massive scale versus just like talking to that one customer every like 1 hour or whatever. So I think those were the key things. And backing up into your question about like women in tech at WGU. When I came to WGU back then, there was no group, there was no support for all that. And I saw that as a problem that, that needed to be fixed. And when that opportunity came, when that initiative came, oh, we need to create some sort of student club so that students can feel united and get the support that they need. I jumped at that opportunity because ideally I saw that as a problem too. And going back to thinking of myself as some sort of fixer, I try to fix things and whatever. I was like, yes, this is a great opportunity. And the only way I felt that I can have a long-term impact is by like being involved, like at the grassroots level, like being right there, being a leader and trying to work through these problems with students and faculty and all that.
That's awesome. The main thing that's going through my head right now is, man, I want to start a company with the three of you guys because of everything that you're doing, like just the passion and the excitement that you all bring. And And I really appreciate the grassroots comment that you brought there, and being able to roll up your sleeves and really, create, be the change in so many ways and find solution and be able to come in, and say, this is the gap that we have and how are we going to close that, which becomes such an important principle in software development as well. And the other theme that's kind of come out of your commentary, and I know with Chaz as well, is this notion of customer service, end users, and just forming that bridge. And again, I think back to my experience when I was in retail and food service too, in my origin story, being able to deal with disgruntled customers, being able to problem solve on the fly. The fact that I was getting 30,000 steps a day and could eat whatever I wanted was a fun thing too. But there's so much parallel that then fed into my career trajectory with analytics when I was leading data science teams and a hands-on keyboard data scientist and eventually getting to join WGU. So I really appreciate that. And, a big shout out to the Women in Tech Club as well, too. If you have any questions about that for anyone who's listening, pop it into the chat. We're happy to get you some more information. For those of you that are WGU students who are listening, we'd love to have you engaged as well. So to round out this segment, I want to ask each of you one more question, which is it's something that I know I struggled with in the past, and I know a lot of folks that are trying to break into analytics struggle with, which is imposter syndrome. So you may be coming from these different origin stories, you're coming into disciplines that are very competitive, right? They are tough by their nature. It's why these jobs are so sought after. It's why the compensation is there. It's why the companies really prioritize hiring in these domains. And you step into these roles, and very often we're hit with, do I really deserve to be here? Am I going to be successful in this? And the answer is yes to those, right? You absolutely deserve to be there. You've done everything you needed to do. You've had that skill mastery. You're going to do amazing things, as we've heard. Have each of you had any experience with that? And if you have, how did you get through it? Any suggestions for the folks that are listening? And maybe Brianna, we can start with you.
Yeah, I've definitely dealt with that, especially switching career paths. I think it's just because, in terms of like our professional career, yes, we do it every day, but that's only 5 days a week. And then that's not to say we're doing the exact same task each day. Whereas walking, we don't have imposter syndrome that we can't walk. We do that every day. And so I think that is just something that I have to remind myself that, yes, even though I'm not doing it each and every day, I do have that knowledge. And so it's like if I get a task, I'm like, oh, I don't think I could like complete the task because I might not know. But as soon as I start doing it, everything rushes back to me. And I think that also just ties back into walking. Like when you're sitting down, you're not thinking about walking, but as soon as you stand up, your body just automatically starts walking. And then I was in the fellowship and we had like our little virtual retreat and they sent us like a little kit. And in our kit was some Play-Doh. And one of the things we did was create our imposter syndrome monsters. And we showed everybody what our like monsters look like. And then we all crushed them together on camera. So that is like another thing to just like visualize what it is and like physically get rid of it.
That is incredible. It's so funny. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I'm thinking about all the times that they've played with Play-Doh on the table, and I'm thinking about getting some right now, and we can create those monsters with all of our students, right? And that's a great suggestion. I really hope the folks that are listening take that and get their Play-Doh and go make those imposter syndrome monsters and crush them. To your point, Chaz, how about on your side, going from culinary arts, the call center, and then into a leadership role in a major financial institution? Any experience with imposter syndrome at all?
Oh yeah, every stage of my career, I see peers, and now that I'm more in that leadership role, people that I directly work with years and years and years of experience, it's always intimidating to say, hey, I'm doing something similar to you, and you always creep in the back of your head, do I have something to offer? Do I have a voice in the space? But echoing the other answer, it's just going through and having a good team, having a good support system that you're working with, having people that you can bounce ideas off of, having people tell you that's a really bad idea. That helps. Kind of iron out what's good and what's bad. Being able to kind of give a little bit of introspective feedback. Think, could I have done that better? Yeah, I could do that better. And I think as long as you continue kind of a learning mindset. I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to get better at things, and I don't feel like I've gotten to a peak. I think that kind of helps with the imposter syndrome because I'm not feeling like I need to be as good as somebody else. I need to just learn as I'm going and embrace it.
I wonder if you're an imposter syndrome monster, your Play-Doh substitute would be a butter mold, given your background, potentially.
Probably a chef with a really hot pan, I'm guessing.
But your comments though make me think of your suggestion to have that sounding board, for example, which is something I know in my career I've always prioritized. And whenever I start a new role, I immediately try to find folks in my network that I can use as that sounding board. And it's a great way to build confidence. It's a great way just to ideate with other folks too, because sometimes what you think is the best idea, maybe you're missing some context, especially if that individual has been with that team or that company for a little bit longer. It can be like, hey, Chaz, you're about to step on a landmine if you go down that path, right? So we may want to think about your narrative a little bit differently. So that's one thing to think about too. If you are struggling with imposter syndrome, finding that sounding board, having that advocate, that person you can work with, potentially a mentor. And continuing again with Brianna's metaphor of building that little imposter syndrome monster with what you have in the kitchen, perhaps. So, Obi, your turn, my friend. So in your career journey, have you come across this at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an ongoing thing. I think for most people, including myself. And, I find this more often when, solving bigger problems, right? The bigger the problem or the more complex the problem, it's like, whoop, another level, right? Or maybe you get promoted and now you're expected to, work at a certain capacity than you're used to, or you were doing. There's higher expectation, almost like, oh, I can't afford to make mistakes. I've got people looking up to me and things like that. So I think it kind of like grows the farther up you go in your career. And for me, that has been the case for me. But I would say, like, I would definitely agree with what you folks have talked about, like finding a strong support system. That has been very, very crucial in my career journey, right? So I'm talking about mentors, I'm talking about colleagues that I can lean on. So like, the same thing you talked about when you start a new job, it's important that you try to seek out um, support and advocate, right? And try to actually get to know people and see if you can form some sort of bond with them. Because obviously they've been there longer than you are, you're fresh and you're coming in brand new, right? You need someone to show you the terrain, right? So I've always been a big advocate for seeking out mentorship, especially in the workplace, right? So when we talk about mentorship, it's like, oh yeah, you need a mentor. And people like think, oh, maybe I don't need a mentor in my organization or my team. I used to be that person too, but it has been life-changing for me, like just having that strong support, having that strong advocate within my organization, within my team. It has been a major game changer. And also continuous learning, right? Tech is always changing. There's always something fresh coming in. There's always something brand new coming in. So it's important that, you're continuously learning. At the end of the day, oftentimes it's not about depth, it might be about breadth, like just having at least a high level understanding of how something works. I think it's has also been important as well. So I would say, yeah, so definitely seeking out strong support systems, continuous learning, very important. You have to invest in yourself, invest in educating yourself and getting to know more about like the terrain, what's changing, new technologies, new innovations. I think that has been key for me.
That's a great point. The fact that there is constant change and the fact that we're always learning and developing. And with many companies that you land at, when you're doing your mid-year and annual performance review, there's always a section called development areas or development opportunities, right? There is an expectation that there is always going to be continued learning and growth. And the other thing I'll say before we move to the next segment, when you land that job, give yourself a pat on the back. Like I have my little disco ball here. I'm going to break out for a second, right? And, and just celebrate around the fact that you got it. Like you have that confidence with the hiring manager. Like you don't need to justify it anymore, but you also need to recognize that there will be continued growth, continued learning, especially if you want to move upward. So thank you all very much for that. So in the next segment, I want to talk about the decision to pursue kind of a formal degree, if you will, a formal credential, and some of the things that led to that decision for you. And maybe we could just end with a little bit about why WGU was right in that part of the journey for you. So Chaz, we're going to start with you for this one. So what inspired you to take that jump into the undergraduate analytics with WGU?
Yeah, well, I had many years of kind of self-teaching up through the ranks of my various jobs with data, and I was thinking about all of the emerging technologies and all of the things that I didn't know about. I taught myself SQL. I was pretty good at SQL. I was trying to learn Python, but I knew that there was millions of things that I didn't know. Um, and if I'm going to be a leader, if I'm going to grow my own skill set, I wanted to have a little bit of a formalized education in it to not only back the credential and have that career path adding into it, but just to have that formalized knowledge, the fundamental knowledge of databases, data, how it works, what are the best ways to analyze something from a textbook perspective, because I had enough of that realistic application, but I wanted that extra context. And when it came to WGU, it was, I have a family, I have two small children and a full-time job. It was an amazing ability to be flexible, choose my schedule, have a routine, and be able to take a pace that was comfortable for me to get through a degree. Even if I had experience in it, I wanted that option to be able to pace myself on those types of classes.
Well, I'm glad you were able to find that option for you, Chaz, and I appreciate those insights. And I think back to when I was originally getting my master's degree and I was leaving the office. I was at EMC at the time, and making that drive in rush hour traffic, trying to get to a physical classroom that was about an hour away, and running on campus to be able to get to that chair in the classroom. And then seeing that the professor was walking in 10 minutes later, and I'm like, oh, I could have walked half of the way, right? But just like the heart palpitations I was having when I would see that there was traffic that I wasn't expecting, and trying to balance, to your point, raising a family, working a full-time job, and pursuing that official credential to be able to solidify some of the skills and have that formalization. So I appreciate that very much. So Obi, I want to go to you next. And you have a little bit of a two-part story here, because you came to WGU originally for the undergrad degree. So I'd love to hear about why you wanted to get that formal bachelor's. But then you also went on to pursue a master's in computer science, I believe, at another university as well, which is not yet an offering that we have here at WGU. Hopefully we'll be able to change that at some point in the near future, but not yet. So Obi, talk to me about your journey there and decisions.
The desire to get a bachelor's degree, obviously, I think I talked about it a little bit at the job I was at that point in time. I had reached a plateau in my career where I couldn't go up any further or higher because I didn't have a degree. So that was the, waking moment for me that, I have to get this done. And then, I did a lot of research as to, what schools, what offerings, what that would look like. And eventually I narrowed it down to two schools. And I think finally what they did for me with WGU was the amount of support I got during the admission process. So I did have a little bit of a rough bump, just like, going through it, financial aid and things like that. I don't remember the details, but whoever I was talking to at that point was very supportive. Like, I remember at one point I was at my job and just like, there was something that happened. I literally just like, I had enough. I literally like broke down, and this person was so like they went out of their way that day to get me the support that I needed. And that was when I decided, at this early point, like I haven't even become a student yet. I'm still like sort of like a customer trying to see if this is the right place for me. And they went out of their way to make sure that I got the support I needed. That was when I said, okay, I think I need to stick with this one, because I definitely, because everyone wants to feel supported, right? Everyone wants to go somewhere where they feel heard and all that. So that was when I said that it has to be WGU. And throughout my time here as a student, I still continue to feel that support, from program mentors, from course instructors, even from, the faculty people that I worked with while I was a WGU Women in Tech club leader. I've always felt supported through every step of the way. And that's one of the reasons why I still continue to be involved with the WGU community, right? So I think support is something that the WGU knows how to do and do well. So that was definitely one of the reasons why I decided to go with the WGU. And, moving on after that, I transitioned fully into software development and finally moved into distributed systems. That was when I decided that, I need to go back to school. And again, it ties back to that idea of continuous learning, right? So I noticed that I had some gaps when it comes to system architecture, distributed computing, and that was what I was that's my work. That's what I do on my day-to-day activities. So that was one of the reasons why I decided I needed to go back to gain a more advanced career, which would be a master's degree in computer science. And it's been really amazing. I try to the program that does focus on distributed systems, which is what I do for my day-to-day job, and it's been amazing so far.
Good for you. That is awesome. And I appreciate the continued theme there and the continuous learning and continuing to challenge yourself and scaffold those skills that you need to be successful in your role. And then the other thing I take away from your comments is, deciding to move into a degree path is a big decision, and it's an emotional decision. There's a lot of challenges and hurdles that can come with it. And, one of the reasons I'm really proud to work with WGU is because of the support structure that is here. And a shout out to the enrollment counselors. So for those that are listening, if you're thinking about taking the plunge into higher education, even if it's not with WGU, talk to our enrollment counselors, get some tips and tricks for it. They are truly there to help you along the path. And then if WGU is not right for you, at least you have that information when you go to the next institution or follow the next pathway. So Obi, thank you. And Brianna, so thinking about now, and you gave us some lead up to this a little bit when you were talking about all the different tech and data that you were starting to hit in your career path. What led to you getting a master's in data analytics, which is a really big step? And now you work as a data support analyst as well too. So talk to us a little bit about those decisions.
I kind of was the same with Obi, where I hit a plateau in my career. Basically, in marine biology, you kind of need to have a higher degree, and all I had was a bachelor's. And so I was looking into grad schools of getting my PhD, but nothing was sitting right with me. And there was a point in time where I was considering data analytics, but I didn't want to have to do like an in-person situation. And then I also was like trying to talk myself out of it because I didn't think that I could like handle getting a master's and working full time at the same time. And so after I decided like the PhD route wasn't for me at the moment, I just did a lot of like reflecting and stuff. And I was like, well, why won't I try the data analytics route? Because I was looking into like doing little course certificates and things of that sort. But in my perspective, I just feel like that doesn't really hold the same weight as a master's degree. And so I finally came across WGU, and I really love the flexibility about it and how I did not have any due dates. I feel like if I was to have due dates, I would have been way more stressed than I was. I went through this course, like I went through it in a year, and I was so stress-free because I could just do it at any time. And it was very informative. And the courses and like the tasks were just so easy, but it was also like a lot of information, a lot of learning that came out of, even though the courses were like quote unquote easy to me, it was very full detail, comprehensive, and like the staff and stuff were great. And so that's how I ended up getting into it. And I also just wanted to like hone my data analysis skills, because in undergraduate, we would do like the data analysis portion, or just like what was the data from whatever class project we just did. And it basically, the professors were just seeing if we knew how to do those techniques, wasn't really seeing if the data was actually correct. And so I was very self-conscious about my ability in that part. So when I got into my first career job in marine biology, I would tell my colleagues, like, I want to hone my data analysis skills. So can y'all like put me on projects that's focused solely on that? And they did, and which I'm very appreciative for them doing that as well. But there was one colleague who told me, like, within the research space, you collaborate on a lot of different things. There could be one person that just strictly does taking the imagery for the drone, and on the like published paper, they're listed, even though all they did was take pictures. And so she was basically saying, like, you don't need to know how to do data analysis. Like, you can always pull somebody in to do that section of a paper for you. And I'm like, but I'm insecure about my data analysis skills. So I would like to have that for myself. And so now, since I have my master's, I wanted to kind of fully hone in on focusing on data for a second, which led me to my new job at the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office, which is where I do some data support.
That's awesome. I appreciate the emphasis you've had on getting that hands-on experience and being able to really hone those skills. And also the conversation piece around PhD versus master's, career pathing, which it's a tough decision too. And you're really thinking about, what are the stepping stones that you need to get to different places? And if you are going to make that investment in a doctorate, that is a tremendous investment, which has a lot of intentionality designed. And, you found that for your career path and what you were looking to do and what makes you happy, that there was a few other stepping stones. Maybe at some point you come back to a doctorate if you decide you want to end up in a pure research position, or maybe you want to come work for WGU or something at some point, right? We'd love to have you, by the way. But I appreciate that many of us go through a lot of that decision making, and there's a lot of intentionality that comes with it. And we're always willing to talk. And if there are folks now that are thinking about that, you can reach out to me as well on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'm always happy to chat about it. So my friends, I very much appreciate that in your path, and I'm sure all of our listeners appreciated it too. And I want to move to our last segment, which is really suggestions, tips and tricks. Just, you have a soapbox right now. I'm looking around my office to see where my physical soapbox is because I actually have one that I stand on. I'm just going to go on my tippy toes instead. This is your chance to speak to other alumni, current students, and friends of the university and just give, what are your tips and tricks? What are your suggestions? What are the key takeaways you want? So I'd love for each of you to take 2 or 3 minutes to share that and join me on the soapbox, this way. So Chaz, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, for the grind of getting a degree, burnout is real. If you're accelerating, if you're taking normal pace, it's really easy to get caught up in, am I even going to finish this? I just bombed a test that I thought I was super prepared for, or I got a paper returned to me and it has so many notes where I'm stuck on something. The biggest advice I could give is when you're starting to feel that burnout, to stop, take a minute, take the night, listen to your favorite album, watch a new movie. The next morning, you get pad and paper, pull up a note, and just say, in 30 minutes, this is what I'm trying to get done in the next week, and let routine take over when you lose that motivation, because there's ebbs and flows over the course. If you get your degree accelerated or the full 4-year term, there's just going to be moments where you're plugged in, you're ready to go, and then moments where I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this at all anymore. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice for sure.
It makes a lot of sense. And, and I'm thinking about personally when I have those tough days and, back when I was working on my studies and even in, in a working role, you will have those tough days too, where things just don't seem to fall into place and you have that motivation struggle, and having that routine or that support structure that you go to. For me personally, there's a particular fast food restaurant that I really like, and it's because it's the one that my mom used to reward me with when I would do something good when I was little. And for some reason, even though it's probably really bad for my stomach, that's where I go when I'm feeling like that, and it gets me back on track because I remember my mom with her encouraging advice when I was in grade school. So I appreciate that, and hopefully everyone listening can find what works for them to get them out of that rut, helps them to disconnect a little bit. Your suggestion for your favorite album makes a lot of sense too. Personally, I throw on Lana Del Rey, for example, if I'm in that kind of mood, and she gets me back on track. So Obi, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I would say the most important. I do have a couple, but I'm just going to start with one. I think it's really important to build a very strong foundation, right? So I know oftentimes most people who are coming into WGU do have some, some sort of experience and all that, but there are also folks who are just, coming in fresh, some out of high school or some pretty early in their career, and they're looking to, learn things from scratch. So I would say it's important to spend time building those skills, like getting good at the foundation, especially like in computer science and software development. They're really important things to learn. They're like, system architecture, advanced algorithms, and things like that. So it's important that you really spend time learning and getting a good grasp of those, foundational skills. Even, as you're considering accelerating or not accelerating, it's important you spend time learning the key things and the foundational things. And, after that, I would say it's important to also practice problem solving. these days the focus of technology is to solve problems. Like there's so many problems in the world that that needs to be solved, and technology, I see technology as a tool to solve problems. So it's important that if problem solving doesn't come natural or it's something you're trying to work on, it's important to practice solving problems. Like you could do this by participating in hackathons. I love hackathons. Hackathons are really, really a fantastic way to solve problems. Yeah, I love hackathons. I did a couple when I was, back at the BG. There's so much, and some of them do have like, prizes and gifts and all that. Even opportunity to work for some of those companies, because some companies do sponsor hackathons. So hackathons are a great and fantastic way to practice problem solving. And I would say another one would be to seek out mentorship. I know oftentimes mentorship is not something that we talk a lot about until you get that job or you start working. But I think even as a student, it's important to seek out mentorship early on, because one fantastic thing you gain from mentorship is feedback. Like you get fantastic feedback from working with a mentor, and they can help sort of like guide you, especially if you're looking to like grow in a certain area. And you can also have multiple mentors. So you can have a mentor that's just going to focus on SQL, for instance, or a mentor who's just going to focus on like system architecture, or whatever thing you're looking to grow on and to grow in. So you can have multiple mentors. So definitely seek out mentorship early on in your career. I think it's really, really important. And I would say the last one would be soft skills. So oftentimes we're so focused on the technical skills. I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn, so programming languages and all that stuff. And we forget the soft skills. I've seen people literally like burn out really bad because they just lack soft skills. So you could be so technical, you could know how to build stuff, you could know how to do all the technical things, but lacking in the soft skill department, that's something that's going to get you kicked out of the workforce like very fast. So I would say definitely develop your soft skills. The biggest one is communication. Communication is super important. So verbal, written communication, very key, very important. And one way to get that practice, aside from school and all that, is also seeking out like student-led platforms, like the student clubs. Like try to participate. Like you don't have to hold like a leadership role, but just active participation can put you in front of people, and that is one way to really practice your communication skills. Especially if you haven't worked before, if like you haven't really held a full-time role or whatever. I think really finding ways to practice your communication skills, especially verbal and written, like very, very key. Like seek out those opportunities. Student-led platforms, working with faculties, all that stuff. That's a great way to practice communication skills for sure. I think that would be all for that question.
I feel like you need to put a podcast together with all those tips as well. That was fantastic, Obi. And a couple of the gold nuggets I'm thinking about from that. One is, when you're looking for these hands-on project activities, you mentioned hackathons, for example, which are a great way to do it. You can also go on your favorite search engine and type in pro bono work as well too. So there's a lot of nonprofits and small companies that are looking for technical help, data analytics help, software development help, computer science help, et cetera. I know there's some organizations that actually specialize in connecting talent to some of those pro bono opportunities as well too. So you get a chance to practice your skills and be able to put a tangible project on your resume while doing good, which is awesome. And then the other thing is with the foundational skills and the soft skills that you mentioned, I put back on my hat from before I was at WGU and I was hiring data scientists. I would have much rather hired somebody who had 70% of the tech skills and strong soft skills than someone who had 100% of the tech skills and very little soft skills. Because you need to be able to work with the business, you need to be able to interact with the team and ideate, you have to be able to tell a story. So I really appreciated that comment. And from the foundational skills, I'm thinking about those that are listening that may be debating between a degree versus a bunch of different certifications. If you do go the certification route, which may work for you, make sure there is something in there on the foundational skills. There's a lot of value in the general education, the gen ed type courses. They help with the communication and soft skills. They create those critical problem solving and algorithmic thinking type skills as well too. So just make sure that those are in there. So Obi, thank you. Spawned a lot of ideas in my head there. And Brianna, I would love for you to close us out with your tips and tricks.
I would just like to echo both Obi and Chaz. Obi hit on basically everything that I was thinking. But from my perspective, I also think like resume for me coming from an interdisciplinary background, I have two different resumes, one strictly for data analytics and one for marine biology. And so the way that those two different is basically for my last position, since I did do a lot of marine biology work, but also had technology and data in it. The marine biology resume focuses strictly on the biology aspect of the project, whereas my data analytics resume focuses on like, oh yes, I enhanced kelp mapping by like 20%. So like putting numbers and stuff and like the details of that part. And then also to, especially coming straight out of undergrad, I didn't have any work experience because I was very much blessed to have had parents that provided for me so I could strictly focus on school. So I didn't have any experience, but I took my like summer, it was like a required class that I had to take, but I listed as like a summer internship and just put down basically what I had to do for school. And so I even still have that listed on my resume because it's been under 10 years. And so I have like my undergrad college, and then I have like my positions as student, and then I listed basically all the things that I did. So I think that's important too, especially coming straight out of undergrad and not having that real world experience, and also to just like those soft skills and just collaborating with people. So for example, like cross departmental collaboration, it sounds like it's such this huge thing, but it's really just talking to somebody from the tech team or talking to somebody that's in like HR department, and we just, even if we just had a common conversation, like that was a collaboration right there. So I think it's also too just about tweaking things because everything is connected. So even within, like I stated previously, how marine biology and data analytics are connected in more ways than people think. I think is you just sometimes have to take a step back and look at the connectedness of everything. There's this really good book called Emergent Strategy, which also talks about kind of like revolutionizing your work and looking at how like everything is connected in terms of like from dandelions to ants, just how they move and navigate through their like community and colony is like the same way that people move through their communities and colonies and whatever the case may be. So everything is literally connected, and sometimes you just have to take away of the kind of like trying to differentiate things, but just based off of a title. And so I think that's another key thing to say. Also, rest. Rest when needed. It is so powerful to rest and resist. So those are my little key takeaways.
That's awesome. And, you know, other than adding a new book to my nightstand here that I need to read, so I appreciate the reference there. There's one other point you made at the beginning of your comments that I just wanted to re-echo, which is having a different resume for different intentions. And very often I find that students or folks that come to me that are trying to break into a certain career market, I ask them to send me their resume and they have one version and they use that exact resume, copy and paste for every position they're applying to. Don't do that. Right? Your resume should be catered to what that role is. You have, as you've heard in this call, you also have so many experiences in your life that you can create the connections to that Brianna was just referencing. And you can custom tailor your resume and your story and your narrative to what that company is, to what that company is looking for. So if you are putting the same resume out to every company, this is your public service announcement, if you will, to pause for a second and really think about the story that you want to tell the same way that we heard from our alumni today. So my friends, as sad as this is, and you know, I've been enjoying this conversation so much, this is going to be the end of our fireside chat. A big thank you to Brianna, to Chaz, to Obi for their time, for sharing their stories, for being really vulnerable and honest with us and giving us some really great gold nuggets and tips to think about. And thank you for listening to episode 15, our Alumni Bites edition. We're going to be back in a couple of months with our episode 16, which is going to focus on decision intelligence, which I'm really, really excited about. And that's going to be a panel-based fireside chat as well. So check out our IT events page for more details on that upcoming event. Again, to our panelists, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, take care, everyone.